welcome back, friends. I have my new friend, Mindy Spigel, with me today, and she is an author and a speaker. She's been on TedX, which is super exciting, in San Antonio. And you guys are in for such a treat because, as you guys know, this podcast is all about being emboldened and overcoming fear. And that is exactly what Mindy is focused on, among other things as well. But we're going to talk about that today. So, Mindy, I'll let you take it from here. If you don't mind, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to now and how you've gotten to this point.
Thank you, Whitney. I really appreciate you having me here in that beautiful introduction. I'm a nurse. I have to start with that because that's really a big piece of who I am, and started my career taking care of children with cancer, never dreaming it would lead to where I am today. So talk about being bold and courageous, and life has just given me opportunities, and fortunately, I was able to take advantage of them. My passion in the last part of my career has been really focused on the patient, creating a great experience for patients and recognizing we have to do that for the healthcare team as well. And in 2018, I assembled a group of nurses to help me interview over 200 patients and families about their fear when they entered into healthcare and what did they need. We did inpatient, we did outpatient, we did surgery, and we did the ER. And what we learned was everybody walks in afraid. Their fears are different, but they all walked in afraid of something. And what they told us across the board was to keep me informed, keep me safe, and keep me comfortable. So, in the last several years, I have focused my career really on helping. I started in healthcare with healthcare professionals since I'm a nurse, helping them recognize that patients walk in our doors afraid, and how do we help them feel safe and feel comfortable so that they can hear us. And I've learned the healthcare team sometimes is afraid and needs those same things. And actually, in the last several years, I've learned that it's not just healthcare. People are afraid everywhere, and that's what they need from us. So that's really what my background is in a nutshell, and what I've really been focused on in the last 5 years.
I love those three principles:
Yeah.
informed, safe, and comfortable.
Yeah.
And that transitions into employers as well and making sure that they're safe. But before we camp out on that, I want to
Hmm.
talk about, so you wrote a book. It's
Yeah.
called There's a Snake on My Head, which I love the title. And then it's Strategies for Alleviating Fear and Anxiety in Healthcare for Patients, Families. Oh, wait, I messed it up. For patients, families, and healthcare. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
and healthcare team. Yes.
And healthcare teams. There we go.
It's the team members. Yes.
So
So
talk
that
a little bit
snake.
more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're wondering, what does that mean? My analogy that actually I didn't create it. I first heard it from this amazing nurse, Colleen Sweeney, who really started me on this journey of the fact that patients walk in the doors afraid and can't hear us. But it sticks with people. So imagine, Whitney, are you afraid of snakes?
Yes, absolutely.
So imagine there is a snake and it's sitting on top of your head, just moving around up there. And I come in and I say, I have really important things to tell you. What will you hear with a snake on your head?
Nothing. Maybe rattling if it's a rattlesnake.
Yeah, right? But you won't hear the important things I'm telling you.
Absolutely
And
not.
yet we do that every day. We do it every day in healthcare. We do it in other settings as well. And until we can help people feel safe, which is different than being safe, and feel comfortable and feel safe and comfortable with us, they won't hear us. So, really, our job is to recognize when people are afraid and to help them get that snake off their head.
Yes, absolutely. You told me a story when we first connected of, well, one, seeing a snake on somebody else's head, but then somebody else explaining that to you as well. Would you
Yeah.
feel comfortable sharing that?
Sure, sure. So, for years, I have taught other people, and I've been known about my snake. And I had been encouraged by my mentor to write a book. So I wrote a book about my research and about what I've learned about fear and how fear shows up and what to do with fear. And he looked at me one day And I had finished the book, but I had decided I was all done. Like the book was written and it was a nice story of my career. And we were FaceTiming like this one day. And he said, "How's the book?" And I said, "Well," his name is Joe Ty, amazing human being. And I said, "Joe, my book is done." And he goes, "Okay, now we have to publish it." And I go, "Joe, I'm not publishing this book. Nobody wants to read it. It's not that important. It's not, I don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to publish a book." And when I was all finished, he looked at me and he said, that whole imposter syndrome, I'm not an author. I don't know how to write a book. And he looked at me and he said, "Mindy, you have a snake on your head." I go, "Joe, you can't use that on me. That's my stuff." But he was right. I had a snake on my head. I was afraid. I was afraid to put my book out there for people. And I truly didn't know how to get a book published. And then he said to me, "Let me connect you with," and he connected me with an amazing woman who helped hold my hand, help me feel safe and comfortable so that we could get this book published. But I realized at that point, how often do we have a snake on our heads and something's holding us back? What do we need to feel safe and comfortable so that we can move forward? What information do we need? Who do we need to help us feel safe and comfortable and know what to do to move forward? And Lisa certainly did that for me. She helped me feel safe and comfortable with her. And I now have a book. So yeah, absolutely. So not only have I learned it's not just in healthcare, when I go see my financial planner, the first time I met him, I have a snake on my head, right? I don't want to talk about my money. It's too frightening for me to know. So I would send my husband, and he goes, "Okay, you really have to come meet this guy." So I went with him one time, terrified. And I can assure you, Whitney, if he jumped in and started with money, I wouldn't have heard a word he said to me, but he didn't. He built a relationship with me. He talked with me. He built trust with me. I could relax and then I could hear him. So it's, I would say to people listening to this, how do you look at your customers, whoever they are that you're working with? What do you think their fears might be? And how do you help them feel safe and comfortable? And then think about the fact that there's times that we need that as well.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing because I think you're right. Anytime we're doing something that is outside of our comfort zone, be that arriving in the ER or dealing with some unforeseen
Mhm.
circumstance, starting a new job, or
For
just
sure.
taking big leaps on our own, there's always going to be this sense of imposter syndrome, this fear that we have to contend with in order to rise into that next level that we have to move into. But it is going to have that sensation of like, I have a snake on my head and I can't hear anything else. And so I love those questions of I can't even I didn't write them down. I wish I would have, but the questions to ask. Can you repeat those if you remember
Keep me
them?
informed,
Keep me
keep me safe, and keep me comfortable. So to think for yourself, what information do I need? Who can help me feel safe and comfortable in this situation? And, I love the analogy of a new job because I talk a lot to organizations about that whole onboarding process. Because if people walk in the door, if you think about your first day of a new job, it is scary. And you're wondering, am I making a good decision? And are they going to be nice to me here? And are they going to help me? And it's natural to have a snake on your head, right? And what do we do usually on the first days? We throw a lot of information at people that they can't hear until they feel safe. If it's you, how do you be courageous and be bold? And what do you need? How do you ask for what you need so that you can be your very best self and do your very best job and hear all the important things that they have to tell you, right? Also, during times of change, people are afraid. And so, what do you need to help you get through that change, right?
Yeah. How, based on like your research and working through this, teaching this, you have a training and development background. You know how
Yeah.
to read people pretty well. So in your experience with all of this, what do you feel like are often the common obstacles or just stumbling blocks for people moving into new positions, new places? As you've researched fear, like you've mentioned those 3, but I'm just curious, is there anything else that, like, you see as a common thing that maybe isn't in one of those categories, but could
Yeah.
be an extension?
Um, well, I think one of the things that's helpful for people to recognize that for me, that's a really helpful thing is that oftentimes we see people who are angry.
Mm,
That's how fear shows up sometimes, not as most people don't come up to you and say, Whitney, I'm really scared, especially if they don't know you that well yet, right? And so it shows up as anger. Certainly in healthcare, patients may become demanding when they're afraid, or families, or, and it's important to recognize that oftentimes when people are angry, and I don't mean physically, like you're not being threatened, they're just upset with you. We're wired to either push back or flee. And neither of those things are going to help someone who's scared, right? That's like our caveman ancestors wired us to protect ourselves. But when that other person's really afraid, pushing back or running away isn't going to help them. So if we could recognize that maybe they're afraid and instead lean in and go, Whitney, I can tell you're really upset right now. What could I do right now that might be helpful?
yeah.
And to listen. And I love Stephen Covey's quote about listening is that when we listen with the intent to understand rather than the intent to reply, just really lean in and listen and let people talk. And the more angry they are, the longer it's going to take. But let them finish, and eventually you'll find out what their fear is. And then we can lean in and begin to help them, right? And so just listen with the intent to understand. And sometimes just ask, what can I do for you right now that might be helpful? How can I help you with this? So, and it builds that relationship and building trust and right. So
Yeah.
for other people that come to us that are afraid, and I love your whole theme of being emboldened and being courageous because let's be honest, when somebody's really angry, you have to be bold and courageous to do what I've just asked you to do, right? But the greatest gift you can give somebody is to just be with them when they're afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done some counseling in the last year just because my own life circumstances have demanded a lot of me and have required me to pull an inner courage out to deal with and not run from circumstances.
Uh-huh.
And I have a
Absolutely.
counselor who has helped me understand there's like how I wish I could remember who the author of this is. I'll link it in the show notes. There's a great podcast on it. But it talks about the elevator of validation and how there are 4 stages of emotional validation. And the further down we get in the elevator, the more we're going to try to run to coping mechanisms or other things that we just need somebody to look us in the eyes and lean in and say, I understand why you feel that way. And when we're not met with that, the elevator continues to go down and we need more of that validation. And as you were talking about anger, we talked about this a little bit in the
Yeah.
pre show of she talks about how I think this one's Jim Wilder, how there's the 6 stages or 6 levels of emotion, and there's kind of the pendulum of the sadness and the fear, and as the pendulum swings, anger is the one we can act on. The other 2
Yeah.
are very internal, and they require us to kinda sit with it and deal with it,
Yeah.
and we don't like to do that. At least I don't, I'll say that. But obviously, like, anger is that point where we can take action on it, and to your point, that's why we see so many people react in that sense when they're scared or sad, and they don't know what else to do with that emotion. It can
Yeah.
get bottled until it comes out in the form of anger, or that just feels like an active emotion we can take versus having to sit with the other ones. So I appreciate you sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And really just to lean in and listen and go, oof, I'm sorry. This sounds really hard for you. What can I do for you right now?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I've learned so much in the last couple of years of like the ministry of presence. Like,
uh-huh.
you don't always have to respond to something. Sometimes just sitting with somebody in the hard things is
Uh-huh.
enough. That's sufficient. And then
Yeah.
sometimes we do need somebody to say something and encourage us, but sometimes just the presence is helpful enough.
And just really listening and saying, I'm hearing you. I hear you.
Yes.
I hear
Yes.
you. It is huge. It's what people want. I mean, most of us want to be heard and understood, right?
Yes. So how can we as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as bosses lean into that validation piece? Like what are some best practices that maybe we can leverage in your experience?
Again, I think it's really about that relationship you've built with your team, both as a team and individually. I love when leaders will sit down with their individual team members to find out just how are things going for you right now, right? And what do you need from me? And do you have the things you need to do your job? And what's frustrating to you? Where do you want to be in a few years? And all those kind of things help to build that relationship and that trust. And you find out what's going on with them. Um, if there's things that, well, I'm terrified because I really don't understand how to do this. Okay, let's fix that, right? And it's going to impact your outcomes if you don't fix it. So, it's helpful for you as a leader to know what's getting in your team's way of being their very best selves. And if nothing is right now, you've said, I care about you as a person and to build that relationship so that when something does come up, they're able to talk with you about it. I think that's probably my best advice. And that is to just, understand that snake's going to pop up at times. And the key times are, when you're going through significant change in your organization, anticipate that people are going to have difficulty with it.
Yes.
Engage them in how to make that change successful and talk with them about how are you doing with this? How are you? So that you can help them through it.
Yeah. And I think to
Lots
your
of
point,
times I was working in an organization and I saw that whenever we got a new leader on a team, results would fall always. Even if it was a very healthy, high functioning team, results would fall because people were dealing with that snake. They were wondering that snake looked like, who is Whitney? What does she expect of me? What is she going to change? What's her hot button I better never push? And while they're worried about all those things, it takes away from their results. So the more proactive we could be to say, okay, I know we're going through a lot of changes right now. How are you doing with them? What do you need from me? May help.
yeah, I love that. I used to do reverse 90-day reviews when I was in leadership and had a team, and I would let them at 90 days, they would review me as the leader and the boss.
I love it.
And so it gave them the safety to know where my thresholds were, that I wasn't gonna react if they said something that, there was transparency there where they knew that they could speak into things. And so it became a running joke that, I was leading during the pandemic, a university
Yeah.
campus, and it was so stressful. And so my bandwidth wasn't always what I wanted it to be emotionally. And so there were times where my team would lovingly be like, "Hey, Whit, I think it's time for a McAllister's break because I love tea." And so they'd be like, "AKA, please go take a moment. You kind of need it right now, you know?" And so that, or like, I would be like, "I need to take a walk around the parking lot." And they totally knew what that meant. But there was this give and take of like, emotionally, they knew that they could speak into things with me. But then when I had to give feedback as well, it was really easy to be like, "Hey, I'm going to lean into this with you. Like, let's talk about this.
Sure.
Help me understand where you're coming from. Why did you take this step? Help me understand this so that we can figure out what maybe would be a more efficient way to do this in the future." And so being able
Yeah.
to understand their point of view and create that emotional safety to where they knew where their thresholds were and that I wasn't going to react strongly with them, it helped with the transparency and camaraderie of our team. So I think that trust is huge.
Whitney, talk about being a courageous leader. Wow. That's huge. That is really huge because you listened to them. They felt they had the courage to be able, because you made it safe, you made it comfortable for them to be able to go into your office and go, I think you need a break. That takes a lot of courage, but you created the environment that they weren't afraid, right? And then the same thing the other way around is then they were open for you to be able to go, okay, let's talk about this. Yeah. I love that. What a beautiful example of leadership.
Oh, thank you. It was interesting, and I mean to that effect too. This is not tooting my own horn. It's really an acknowledgement of how great they were. Like we were a really small team, understaffed during the pandemic, and so they would see me cleaning toilets and vacuuming floors, even as a VP of our campus. Like the leader at the top of it, and then I would see them out picking up trash outside
Mhm.
with trash bags and gloves on, and like going the extra mile. And there were many times where I was like, you guys don't have to do that. And they're like, but we want to. And so I think to that end,
You
like what you
created
model
that
as a
culture.
leader. Yes.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
go back to the snakes. So we've talked a little bit about, or we've talked quite a bit about it, but what are some ways that maybe we as leaders, as individuals, it can be more proactive to not reach the anger stage, to recognize that we have a snake on our head? I mean, I know we kind of keep coming back to the same base of those three pillars, but I feel like there's got to be some more proactive things that we can do to regulate and create that psychological safety or trust with people that we're leading.
A lot of the examples you've just shared certainly help to build that relationship and that trust for sure. And like I said, meeting with people individually and talking with them, whether it be an informal flyby to go, how are things going, or really a sit down like you and I are doing to build that relationship. One of my big things I always say is to know one thing about people that has nothing to do with their job, because what you have then said, it doesn't take long, but it builds that connection, and they know that you care about them as a person. So always know one thing about anyone you're talking about that has absolutely nothing to do with why you're talking with them. The other thing, I just need to keep going back to change because I think that's one of the big times when that snake pops out and I think the world is constantly changing today. The work environment is constantly in changing, whether it be a different software system or a different process to do things or a different things are constantly changing today at a rapid pace. And most people don't really like change. And so that snake pops out with change. So I think I would probably say to your listeners, please be bold and be courageous and step forward. Um, when you're dealing with change, some of my tips for people is I think most people deal with change better when they get involved in how it happens. Plus, they're the ones who are in the trenches doing the job. They know how to do their jobs best. So I often say to organizations, those frontline people might not have say about strategy. That probably happens at a higher level, but how you get to that strategy, the more engaged I am as a frontline person, if you're impacting my job, the more you as a leader listen to my ideas about how to get to where you want to be. You as a leader don't care how we got there. You care that we get there. How we get there, the more I have control over it, A, the more successful we're going to be because I know how to do what we're doing. And B, I'm going to be more engaged because you've asked my opinion and I've said, if we do this, we'll be successful. I'm going to make sure we're successful.
Yeah.
And the more people get a chance to do, the more the snake disappears. The more I feel engaged in it, the safer and more comfortable I feel with this change, right? And yet, how often do we come in and we don't tell people even why? We just walk in and say, tomorrow we're going to start doing it this way. And people don't know why. We haven't thought about the how. You haven't given me time to get comfortable with it. In my last job, I was a change agent. I'm the one who had to help teams change, right? And yet I don't like change very much myself. Actually, I had one leader once say to me, Mindy, you love change when it's your idea. So I needed to very quickly understand why we were doing this, how doing this is going to make a difference in the organization. Like, how will we know this was successful? And then engaging people and helping us figure out how to get there. And the more we do that, the more it battles that snake.
Yes, I just wanna, like, give you a standing ovation right now for all of that, 'cause that is essentially my business model, is like, let's
Oh,
get to the root. I mean, I love it. I'm like, yes, all of that, because it is how do we get to the root constraints? You sit in a room with the same people all the time, you start speaking the same language, you see things through the same lens, and so until you get to the root and get down to the base of the organization with the
yeah.
people that have the real pulse on your organization, it's really difficult to know what problems to solve for, right? We're
Yeah.
solving for what we think the problem is without understanding what the root causes are. So I was just like sitting here like, yes.
I have to give Disney credit for this one. I'm gonna share a real quick story if we have a minute.
Yeah.
I went to a one-day Disney workshop one time, and this story stuck with me, and this probably happened 30 years ago, but the story has stuck with me. They told a story. Disney doesn't do anything just by accident. So they have when you go and park at Disney World in Orlando, they'll tell you 3 times while you're on the tram where your car is parked because it's such a huge place. The parking lot is so huge. And so they'll tell you, welcome to the Magic Kingdom. You're parked at Goofy One. And a little bit later, they'll say, hope you have a great day at the Magic Kingdom. And when you're ready to leave, don't forget your Goofy One. And before you get off, they tell you one more time. Well, every day, apparently, lots of people walk out and say to the guy who's there at the end of the day and they're tired and they've dragged out and they go, I don't know where my car is. And they've got the whole parking lot, right? So one day a parking lot attendant said, if we could just write down what time of day we did each row, most people know about when they arrived. And I actually tell the story a lot in my classes, and somebody one time checked it out for me and came back and went, they really do. They pretended they didn't know where their car was. But now if you walk out and you say, I'm so sorry, I don't know where I parked, they'll say, what time did you get here this morning, Whitney? And you say 8:15, and they look at their list and they said, I think you're near Goofy One. Hop in my cart and we'll find your car. I don't believe any executive at Disney would have ever come up with that strategy.
No.
It took that parking lot attendant, right? And he had to be brave enough, courageous enough, emboldened enough to step forward and say something like, I have a better idea of how this could happen. And it took some leadership person to listen and help make that change occur. It's much better for the guests at Disney, and it's much better for the staff at Disney, right? So that's where I'm a firm believer that you have to ask people who do the job. They know how to do it. You
Yes.
just need to ask them.
Yeah. I say that all the time. Like, I don't need to be the expert in your industry. I just need to be the expert at pulling out what's already inside your team. If I can do that well, then you already have everything you need embedded inside your team. You have more resources than you've even begun to tap into. But if we can untap that, if we can tap into that and pull that out and unleash people and their creativity, your team is going to elevate to levels you don't even realize yet. And it's not me, it's just me helping facilitate that day, right? And it's the same
Yeah,
thing for you. You're helping facilitate these conversations by bringing your presentation, by talking about the snake on the head. Like
yeah,
we're all gifted to bring what we contribute best and tap into what's already inside of people and embolden them to step into that purpose.
yeah, yeah. So when I first got out of nursing school, all of 21, 22 years old, I was working as a pediatric nurse in a general hospital. So only that one floor was pediatrics and all the rest were adults. And they didn't have any, and this is, back in the 70s, and they didn't have any, the artwork on, it was like white walls. There was no pediatric friendly. And back then, parents were considered visitors, and visiting hours back in the 70s, like at 8 o'clock, hospitals shut down and all visitors left. Well, it's scary to be in a hospital as a child. And I would think, how do they think that that mom or dad is the visitor, not me? Like, I kind of thought I was the visitor in that child's life, right? And one day I was having to give this child shrimp creole to eat, and even well children don't usually like shrimp creole, let alone sick children. And I kept complaining to my head nurse, and she said to me one day, she goes, she didn't know what to do with me. She goes, Mindy, if you want to make all these changes, you're going to have to talk to the chief nurse of the hospital. And I didn't know back in the 70s you didn't do that. And so I said, could I? And she made an appointment. And I went down there to talk with her with my little list of things I didn't think were pediatric friendly in this adult hospital. And she listened and she nodded. And I left thinking, I don't think anything's going to happen, but she was very nice. And I went off to graduate school. And I come back during one of my breaks and I got onto the unit, and one of the CNAs ran up and grabbed my hand and said, "Come with me." And there in all the rooms was a bed for the parents, and they had a pediatric menu for children to choose their meals off of, and there was artwork on the walls. And I thought, wow, if the people, and again, that chief nurse didn't want to create a bad experience for children. They just didn't think of it, right? I was there at the bedside with those kids. So we need to be courageous and we need to be brave and we need to be in an organization that's willing to listen to us so that we step up and we don't just sit back and think, they really cared about these patients, they'd do something differently, right? Or if they really cared about the parking lot experience at Disney, they would do things differently. We have to be bold and courageous and speak up. And organizations need to be bold and courageous to listen and think there might be a better way.
Yes, absolutely. I love all of that. That's so true. You talk a lot about finding your why,
Yeah.
that helps motivate us. And so we've already talked a little bit about this. We're kind of talking in big circles, but I
That's
appreciate you
okay.
being willing to kind of keep going with it. Um, on how to stay focused to what matters most to us. So, again, from your experience, what are some best practices there? What advice might you give to leaders or entrepreneurs?
Well, I talk about this a lot and when I do workshops or keynotes or whatever, because I think it's so important. In fact, John Gordon says it really well. So I'm going to just quote him. He says, every day, focus on your purpose. Remember why you do what you do. We don't get burned out because of what we're doing. We get burned out because we forgot our why. And so, how do you stay connected? One of the things that I oftentimes will do in a workshop is have people on an index card. I'll give them a big index card and have them write down why they do what they do, whatever their job is, what made you go into that area. Sometimes I'll have them tell a partner first and talk about it, and then write down on an index card what their why is. And then take that card and put it at your desk if you have a desk, or at your mirror when you're getting up in the morning, or every day read that card at the beginning of your day. At the end of your day, as you're driving home, do you, and I know most of us do, I do, drive home and beat ourselves up all the way home about, oh, I wish I had done that. I wish I had done this. I wish I had said that differently. I wish I had more time. I wish. And you beat yourself up all the way home about what a bad job you did. Stop it. And this is my homework assignment at the end of any workshop I ever teach. I say, for now on your way home at the end of the day, ask yourself, and you can blame me. You can say that crazy person, Mindy, told me I have to do this. Every day, ask yourself, how did I make a difference today? Who did I make a difference for? Because every day, all of us make a difference. We forget that part and we focus on what we wish we did better, but instead focus on how we made a difference that day, and it begins to refill your cup. And so, whether you're working at home and it's just as you turn off your computer, you take 1 minute to go, what did I do today that made a difference in the world? Or you're driving home, walking home, riding your bike home, take that moment to go, I made a difference, and here's how. And
Yeah.
I think that helps us stay focused on our purpose, on our why in the world. And it refills our cup so we can keep going. I'm not so naive that I think every day is going to be an easy day. I know some days aren't, but it keeps us going when we think about how what we do is important and makes a difference to people.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great exercise to do. I need to do that. And then, too, I mean, especially when you're in a field like healthcare or anything that's giving a lot, ministry or otherwise, like you're
Yeah,
pouring out so much that compassion fatigue is real.
it
And
is
so
real.
that type of exercise kind of keeps you
Yeah.
from the burnout cycles maybe as significantly.
Yeah. No, it can because most of it, for example, I can really only can speak as a nurse, but I went into nursing to make a difference. And it was I got sick when any of my children, I told you I started off working with kids with cancer. I got sick when those kids died, literally physically. My mom always knew when I lost another patient because I'd get a cold or I'd get, something. And, because I took it home. But what if we realized, because we went into healthcare, we went into whatever we did for a reason to make a difference. As a leader, You went into leadership to make a difference, hopefully to make a difference for your team, hopefully to reach some goals for your organization, to make difference for your customers. We all did. And if we can stop every day and go, not, I lost a patient, but did that patient die a little more comfortably? Then I've made a difference. Did I save 10 patients today? I've made a difference, right? And if you're not in health, and then that helps with the compassion fatigue, right? Because you're taking care of yourself. And I think we do need to take care of ourselves. I think we need to figure out what fills our cup and keep doing it beyond just saying I made a difference today. But whatever field you're in, I'm going to go back to the story early on about my financial planner that I didn't want to meet and I was terrified. He made a difference because he made me feel safe. And when I left at the end of the day, my husband knew where all of our money was and how everything was, but I had a friend and I knew if anything happened to my husband, there's somebody I could call who knows, right? He made a difference. So whatever field you're in, every day you're touching people's lives and making a difference.
Yeah.
And it's important.
Yeah. I love that. That's probably the best reframe to start this year is really just thinking about what is your why? Get really clear on that and then come back to at the end of the day, did I activate my why in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah. And so leaders, here's what I'm going to shout out to you. Next time you have a one-on-one with your staff, ask them, so Whitney, why did you go into, and let them tell you what their why is. It might be the first time they've thought about it in a while. And then ask them to write it down on an index card and read it every single day before they come to work. And it's a great gift. And then ask teams like, what went well today? Not what went wrong today, but what went well today? What are
Yes.
you proud of?
Yeah, I've always heard it's easier to think about the negative than the positive. So always start with positive because once you get on the negative train, it's a lot harder to come back to the positive. So even if
Yeah.
you need to get to the what can we do better, starting meetings with where are we winning? What can we celebrate? Focusing intentionally on the wins first and then going, okay, now what could we have done better this week? How can we improve for next week?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. If
Oh,
people want to get in touch with you, if they want to get your book, it'll be linked in the show notes too. But if they want to get in touch with you, if they're like, I need more of Mindy in my life, how can
oh,
they follow, purchase, connect, hire you? What would that look like?
you're so kind. Probably for sure link in with me. That would be great. I also have a website, mindyspiegel.com. You have to make sure you spell Mindy Spiegel correctly to find it, but mindyspiegel.com. That's Spiegel only has one E in it. So it's Spigel, and Mindy is with a Y, Mindy. All one word, mindyspiegel.com. LinkedIn. And from my website, you can there's a link to click to get to my book, which is on Amazon, and it's called There's Steak on My Head. And it also has a link to my TED Talk, which, I'd be honored if anyone listened to it if they wanted to hear more. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, is there anything we haven't covered yet that you're like, oh, I would love to share this?
I feel like we covered a lot.
We did.
It was really fun.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again for sharing your insights. And all of those links are going to be linked in the show notes. So you guys go connect with Mindy and follow along on her journey because I've learned a lot from her in the few conversations we've had. And I can't wait to continue growing alongside you, Mindy. And I know
Thank
other
you.
people will
Me
be blessed
too.
by the work you're doing. Thanks.